So Kelly, well, how do you give um, when you're not starting another business? How do you give, and what do you want your legacy to be?
Okay, I'm going to start with the legacy portion of that question.
Okay.
In 2002, I lost my father. He was an attorney in New Orleans, Louisiana, and this past May, I lost my grandfather on my mother's side. So these were two extraordinary men that pretty much shaped not only our family legacy, but my own personal legacy. I've always said that I stand on the shoulders of my ancestors. I am the granddaughter of a communist sharecropper on my father's side, and the second generation law student and college graduate on that side also. On my mother's side, I'm the third generation college graduate, and I've always said that, using a different world references, my mother married Dwayne. So two different sides, two different entities, but they've shaped the person that I am today. My legacy is all about my family and what they have taught me. As an attorney, my father would take cases that no one else wanted to. Sometimes instead of getting paid monetarily, people would bring him hot plates, breakfast on a Saturday morning, as payment to say, thank you. Thank you for believing in my case when no one else would, and thank you for believing in me. My mother, I could go on and on for days about my mother. She's Gail Cunningham, and she's the executive director of JCCEO here in Birmingham, and has influenced the lives of thousands here in the community. So to say that I have pretty big shoes to fill would be an understatement. And in knowing that what I do can't create the type of impact that they have done for others through the course of their lifetime, I try to do it step by step and slowly but surely so that I can be that positive influence in the lives of others. My biggest goal through my businesses is to one day be able to provide others with the opportunities that I've been given my entire life. I want to look at young minority children and say, you can dream. You can think of something, what you want to be, what you want to do, and you can achieve that goal. Because my parents never said no. They never told me that I could not do anything that I ever attempted to do. And I want to be that person that encourages, and I try to this day through my mentors, through my employees, I try my best to encourage them to be that, the kind of person that they want to be. And that will come through investment in their dreams or just time spent with them currently. So my giving back is not only through the community, through organizations, but it's through time. It's through taking the hand of a child and just listening to them. It's through just remembering what my family has done, what my family is doing, and trying to impact the community around me, not only in Birmingham, but in New Orleans, through my businesses, through these organizations, as much as I possibly can.
Mm-hmm. All right, thank you. Thank you, Kelly. All right. So, Marguerite, how do you give, and how do we in this room, how do we promote philanthropy moving forward?
Good questions. Well, as you heard Lord describe, I've spent a lot of my professional life in institutional or professional philanthropy. For 4 months, I've been Senior Vice President for Grants and Initiatives at the Community Foundation of Greater Birmingham here. Before that, $7 million a year from the United Way. Before that, I was Vice President of the W.K. Kellogg Foundation. Before that, I helped start Rose Community Foundation in Denver, Colorado. Denver's a And before that, I was Senior Program Officer at the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. But I have to say that this has been a real rare and wonderful opportunity to talk about my own views of philanthropy and also to think about what are some of the creative expressions of giving. And I want you to know that even though I've spent a lot of time working in professional philanthropy, there are so many things that you can do with your giving, with your time, your talent, and your treasure that does things that no foundation, no matter how big, can ever do. So I want you to keep that in mind. So I guess I just wanted to start by just to illustrate different ways of giving by using a very old metaphor that I know all of you know, which is you give a person a fish, they'll eat for today. If you teach a person to fish, they'll eat for a lifetime. And I think that that is a very legitimate, very important way of giving, which is to help people with their very basic human needs for food, clothing, and shelter. And if you think about it, that's exactly what happened after the tornadoes that hit Alabama in April of 2011. There was a multitude of generosity that poured out all over the country. The Community Foundation had the privilege of holding some of the funds that that went into the mayor's tornado disaster relief fund. We had the opportunity to hold the funds that were raised through the Bama Giving or Bama Rising concerts that raised money for survivors. And we also were able to mobilize our staff, our board, our constituents, community members in actually going out and being a part of the physical recovery effort. So if you can imagine what it's like to see one of the wealthiest women in the state of Alabama getting her hands dirty down in the mud, picking wooden splinters out of her hands, that's really very profound. So no matter how much money you have, as these ladies were saying, giving your time is something that's also very precious that you can't put a price tag on. But I want to carry that metaphor a little bit further. So imagine that if you teach a person to fish and you give them a fishing pole, then that person can feed their family for a long time. And you have the advantage then of making an investment in that person or their family that will really help them to help themselves in a way with dignity. They don't have to rely on someone to give you something else. You're giving them a tool that they can use to support and feed their family, not just today, but for tomorrow. If you want to take it a step further than that with this metaphor, imagine if you gave a group a grant to buy a dozen fishing poles and empowered this person that knows how to fish to teach her neighbors how to fish and use these fishing poles and the baits and the fishing licenses, then what they can do is they can not only feed their own families and their neighbors, but they can take the excess fish that they have, take them across town and sell them at a good price, and make enough money to pay their own bills. Now think about how powerful that is. That really is helping to create a sustainable source of income for these families. It's a way of helping them generate wealth, generate assets, and that's something that's even more important or as important as giving someone a steady salary. And if you as an individual don't have the funds, the resources to be able to give a big grant, that's a perfect opportunity to create a giving circle, like the Birmingham Change Fund. Or it's an opportunity for a group of you and your friends to create a donor-advised fund at a community foundation, and they will make grants according to your interests. So there's a real power in collective giving. If you only have $100, but then your friend has $100 and another friend has $200, just think about what you could do by giving together. Okay, so we're going to take this metaphor one more step, or another step, so stay with me now. So if you think about it, let's say you created a giving circle, or you created a donor-advised fund, and that fund that you created has been able to use its assets to be a loan guarantor at zero interest, or you can use your assets as collateral to buy down the interest rate for a commercial loan to be able to help this new fishing cooperative to buy a fishing boat. Then you've really enabled people to create wealth for their families and for their communities. And it really is a step beyond just making a grant, as important as those early grants were, but you really are using all of your assets in a way to help people save for their children's education, to buy a home, to expand their business. And all of that started with the simple act of you giving that one fishing pole to that one person who you taught how to fish. So, and I think that, to me, that's the essence of philanthropy as compared to charity. Charity is giving something that fills an immediate need. Someone is hurting, you want to help them. You give them something that they need to live. Philanthropy really is an investment in a person, a community, a nation, and with the desire or expectation of seeing a return in positive change for the long run. And that's what philanthropy is to me. So I want to take this metaphor just one more step further. And I want to do that by giving you an ending with this quote that's one of my favorite quotes from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who said, "Philanthropy is commendable, but it must not cause the philanthropist to overlook the circumstances of economic injustice, which makes philanthropy necessary." So let's look back at that person that you gave a fish to, and this means that we have to ask ourselves, why was that person hungry in the first place? Is it because she grew up in a community with really bad public schools and the only low-skilled job she could get, if she found a job, paid minimum wage? As philanthropists, I believe that we should also be advocating for high-quality education in our communities. Think about that person that you gave a fish to. Maybe he was hungry because his wife has a serious chronic health problem, and because they can't afford home health aid, he can't work. And because they don't have health insurance, their medical bills are so high that they've had to declare bankruptcy. As a thoughtful giver, I believe we should also be advocating for healthcare reform and improving access to healthcare for those without insurance. Or maybe just consider that person was hungry because the commercial fishermen and farmers had worked out a political deal giving them exclusive rights to land and water. I believe, as a thoughtful philanthropist, we need to be advocating for policy changes and even lobbying for changes in the laws that enable people to, for example, have access to natural resources in order to feed their families. So giving money is important, giving time is crucially important. But I also encourage you to not forget to fight to change those underlying reasons why our brothers and sisters need our help in the first place. So thank you very much for inviting me this evening.
Right. So our last speaker before we open it up for questions, Mr. Dix, how do you give, and how has the history of Birmingham shaped your giving?
Well, thank you, Lord. And I almost want to say thank you for having me last, but I'm going to reserve that. Lord will tell you, I called him earlier this morning. I said, "Is this at 3 o'clock?" And he said, "No, it's at 7. And so I'm glad I'm here now. And I really appreciate the fact that I called you. And I've listened to the other speakers, and they've all got their notes. And actually, if someone has their notes on their palm, and so I've got my notes on my phone. So this may be a little bit different. But I think the question of how do we give, most of us have answered through service through boards and organizations, through being successful as an entrepreneur and helping to employ people, through being involved in giving and involved in philanthropy. I think all of those are important. What I want to talk about for a little bit is why. Why should you give? And I'll be real personal about that. I believe that I was blessed that after coming out of college in 1973 with no real goal, no ambition, a college degree, but never having really thought about what I was going to be when I grew up, somebody called me and gave me a job, and I mean gave me a job at a bank. And they put me on a management training program, and about a year later they gave me the authority to make loans. Boy, a guy that went to Tuskegee and grew up in Birmingham in the Civil Rights era, when most of the stuff that you see memorialized in this institution were happening, got a chance to actually make
Executives fellowship programs, and that he was the first person that had gone through that fellowship who was not a part of organized or institutional philanthropy. I think there need to be more of us that do that. So I want to encourage, I've been trying to encourage more and more people to think of themselves as philanthropists, no matter where you work. And also to try to nurture folks who might have an interest in working in the field and who have an interest in working to support nonprofit organizations. So trying to leave a legacy in those ways.
Making sure that that she's going to leave something long after she's gone. That's impactful. And it also plays into a part of the conference where we will on tomorrow have attorneys to talk about estate planning who will be available for those who might be interested in learning more about it. Because that's a piece that's missing. That's a key piece that's missing in communities of color. African Americans, whether it's Hispanic, whether it's Native Americans, Asian. We all need to do more of that. Are there any other questions? Next question.
I really see that it's a mixed bag. I think some foundations really get it, and they really are about empowering people, not taking care of them. Some foundations are active in changing public policy, and using the IRS really does give us some ways that we can get involved politically. And some foundations have realized that they don't have to be afraid of advocacy. They don't even have to be afraid of lobbying if you know what you're doing with the tax laws. So some foundations get that. I think it's been, the reason why some of them haven't kind of goes back to how some of our largest foundations got started, which, you know, for some people it was a way of, you know, getting a tax benefit. For others, it was a way of trying to help people by doing for them, not doing with them. And I think the foundations that really have embraced trying to look at underlying causes, it really is about working in the community with people, not just trying to take care of them by giving things to them and throwing money at problems. But I think we have a long way to go for some of our foundations out there.
We're going to the back and we'll come to the front.
Talk about collective giving and the impact of collective giving. And it seems like common sense, but it's not common practice. What are the challenges? Why is it so challenging to give?
Michelle.
Right, but the question was, what are the challenges to?
What are the challenges in giving? Why is it challenging? What are the challenges in giving collectively?
Okay, let's go. I think that, for one, the word philanthropy scares people. It scares people. If you talk to the common person and use the word philanthropy, they think that that's a term and that's an area that only rich foundations can mess with. And so I think it's a matter of educating people that philanthropy does have this much broader, frankly, more elegant meaning. And that not only, you know, there's strength in numbers, and that's another point that people need to understand. This is more delving into the political piece, but when you talk about the strength in numbers piece, I saw somewhere recently that 2 Greek organizations have gotten together and formed a super PAC because they realized that there was power in getting together to do that. And similarly, we've got to do a better job of educating our community about the power of the collective. That is, frankly, a part of, in a much smaller scale, of course, what I hope to try to do is to bring more collective awareness to issues and get more collective involvement. But that's hard because you have so many disparate pieces with so many different interests. It's hard to find the commonality, and I think what we've got to do is try to work harder to make the case for the commonality and the need for the giving. But I mean, that is That's a very lofty aspiration. I don't have the answer for how to do it, but it is absolutely a challenge.
So Bob, you being in the banking industry and being around people who have the ability to give, what do you think are some of the reasons why we don't see collective giving? I guess in response to his question.
Yeah, well, from most institutions, they want their name on their gift. And I think that maybe it's selfish. And now they do give to organizations. And a lot of times you'll find that they'll say, well, we took care of that when we gave to United Way or when we gave to one of the major organizations. We've taken care of that need, and so we don't need to continue to do that. And so I think that those are the two reasons that we may not see it as much. Now, I guess giving to United Way or giving to major foundations is sort of a collective giving, because most of the major corporations and major funders do that. So maybe they think that they've done their job when they've done that. And I guess the fact that we don't necessarily see that gift, and unfortunately we may not even see the impact of the gift, so it's not realized. And I don't know, maybe the answer is if we don't see it, it didn't happen. What's the old adage, if the tree falls in the forest, did it really fall? And so I really think you have to delve down into it. I think that smaller organizations and the ones that don't necessarily have the PR presence need to continue to try to make an impact so that I make it important for you to support my cause. How you do that, I don't know that we have the answer to that, but I think that we know that that's a question that has to be answered.
So when I think about the question, I think that we give and we don't realize that we're doing collective giving. If you ever given to a church and they've taken up a love offering, and when they don't get enough, they pass it around again. I'm a Baptist preacher, so I can. That's collective giving. It's supposed to be used to take this pot of money and do good for someone, for a community, or what have you. I mean, that's what it's used for. In our fraternities, in our sororities, when we give up our dues and we give up our time and our talent, that's a form of collective giving, because in our formation, in our aims and our mottos, it's supposed to be a part. Service of the community is supposed to be a part of it. And so I think one of the things that we talked about on last night was the language around giving and around philanthropy. And so part of the reason that we don't see it is because common people might not understand the language of philanthropy, and organized philanthropy doesn't always pay attention to the language of people who don't work inside of it. I think we will see, or what CIN is doing as we bring community philanthropists to the table to talk about what is philanthropy, and begin to demystify philanthropy and redefine philanthropy to what we want it to be and what we know it can be. Then I think we begin to see more of that collective giving, and we can begin to see that we've been doing collective giving for a long time. Yeah. All right. We got time for one more question.
What I love about what you talked about is how you identify resources and use those for good. So my question to you is, how have you learned to recognize what you had to give and if it required involving another person or job or what have you, with some of your entrepreneurs, how do you get their buy-in so that you can in turn make the impact you desire?
I think my awareness, this is good. I think my awareness came from my job in a professional and career context. The awareness of the resources I had at my disposal that were everyday and mundane to me, but I came to realize that out in the community, there was value in those resources. And it took conversations and getting involved in the community and getting involved in organizations that needed help. And I'm very much a proponent of people want to make a difference when they know what the organization is about and what it's doing. And that's very important whether you're a volunteer for an organization or whether you're on the board. You need to be committed and a supporter and a champion of that organization's mission. It's not enough to show up at the board meetings and occasionally go to a function or a reception at the BCRI. You've got to be intimately aware of that mission for it to mean anything to you. And it's at that point when it begins to mean something to you that you find yourself advocating for that organization. And it just happens naturally. But becoming aware that and it's about relationships as well in the community. Knowing that you have a relationship here with A and you have a relationship with B, A and B, as I mentioned earlier, need one another, but they have no idea how to communicate in the same way or how to reach out to one another. So realizing those opportunities where you can be that bridge, for me was how I got into the world of kind of strategic relationships as far as philanthropy and community outreach.
I was the kid that, can you hear me? Teacher's Day off, I was pretty much at my mother's office. Summers, I was at my father's office. I was always doing something. I never was allowed to be lazy in many ways. So I got to see firsthand what my parents did every day. My summers in Jackson, Mississippi with my grandparents, I got to see the impact they were making on the community also. So it's kind of from birth. I just knew that in some kind of way I need to help, I need to give, I need to make an impact to my community in any way possible. And like Michelle said, relationships are huge. I try to emphasize to the younger generation that be cognizant of your circles, be cognizant of your friends. I've had the same friends since I was 2-3 years old. Still just saw them yesterday and today in New Orleans. And seeing the people that they've grown into to become and the impact that they're making on their communities collectively and individually pushes me to do more. And pretty much that's to just try to achieve more. And that's really huge. So individually, collectively, relationships and that foundation has, just brought me to be the person that I am.
Do we have any others? All right. One more question? All right, one more.
Boy, that's a tough question.
You're glad I let him ask that question now, aren't you?
It's a tough question. I don't know that you can, I don't know. Okay, so having said that, I guess some of us have to find a way to work outside the lines, behind the scenes, undercover, and do what you can do. Because we don't always get a chance to do things through organizations, and yeah, quite often we do work for organizations that where we don't share their philosophy and they don't buy into ours. I came up in banking, started in 1973 in banks in Alabama, and obviously we didn't see eye to eye, and oftentimes I still don't see eye to eye with those institutions. So you find a way to work, around that, to work under that, and just do what you can do. There's no automatic mandate for what you have to accomplish. It's pretty much personal. And so when you've done all that you can do, I think you can feel satisfied.
So I can see everybody that's kind of squirming in those aluminum chairs. And so we told you I'm casual. So let's give our panelists again another round of applause. I think you have given us a lot to think about, a lot to digest in how. So let us give our panelists again another round of applause. I think you have given us a lot to think about, a lot to digest in how each one of us can individually give and how you all have individually given. And so on behalf of, I don't know if anybody has ever told you from those who you helped to impact, but if they haven't, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your talent. Thank you for your inspiration. Thank you for your expertise. Thank you for giving, because all communities need givers. Amen? Amen. All right.